Hello, everyone. Okay. Oh, Instagram. Hold on. I don't usually do this, but I have to clean my camera. Oh, my phone. Oh, see, much better. Can't deal with that halo. Okay. Instagram, you're right here. Facebook, you're right here. So as usual, I'm trying to look like in the middle, just so you guys get a frame of reference. Instagram, just want to give you guys a little message that I know you often get cut off because I'll go a little bit over an hour. I'm actually going to be taking this whole series and putting it onto my IGTV. So it's going to go back like a while. And for you guys on Facebook, all of these series, I know that it says episode 12. This was something that I started doing last fall-ish, and then I totally kind of stopped during the winter, and now I'm re-picking up it. I don't always have one. Like next week is Pride, so I'm not going to be here, but I like to do these, especially like when during the week I really have like a theme going on, so I can share that with you guys, and you can really like watch the journey as it's unfolding instead of feeling like she disappears and comes back, and like I still disappear and come back. But say hi when you pop on. Let me know you're here. I know I was a few minutes late, but I had to get my gratitudes in and make sure that I have my coffee. Mom life. So today's topic. No. Oh, it's okay. Sorry, I was like rolling over something. Today's topic is how to get your kids to listen to you, which is really funny because it's not really that, but it is that, but it's not. So before we really get started, let's get like the logical part of your brain satisfied so that we can move past that crap. So logically, the most important thing as a parent that you need to do is child development study. And the best series, the best books that I can recommend on this is actually The Whole Brain Child and, good morning, Michela. The Whole Brain Child, No Drama Discipline, and The Yes Brain, all by the same people, Dr. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson, in fact. Anyway, so those are the names of the people. I'll add it afterwards. And they really help you to remember and think like, what is developmentally appropriate for my child? The biggest issue in America is this weird concept that we have that we kind of talked about last week of as soon as a child is old enough, like walk, talk, can build like blocks and can wipe their own butt, then they need to be a full grown, like they're like a mini adult. And we don't expect them to throw temper tantrums, and we expect them to listen right away and all these other things. And when you go to the hospital, they give you like a whole bunch of things for like breastfeeding, or if you do home births, even like your midwife, she's giving you breastfeeding tips and newborn care and all this stuff for like the baby. But then like the cliche is there's no instruction manual for parenting, right? Which is what my genius is, why I have my clients, why I'm able to be writing a book, why I'm going on podcasts and interviews and traveling and doing all these things, speaking about this topic, is because I have done the work, not only on a logical side, and also on an emotional and physical and energetic side as well. So my entire like whole life is aligned to this purpose of being a pleasurable parent in every aspect of my life. I don't just come on here and talk about it. It's like you get me, and if you were into like a room with me in person, this is who you would get. And if you were to interview me somewhere, this is who you would get. So I don't put on a face. You don't get like some different version of me. Like this is me all the time. So just want to like, there's that. Hi everyone. Oh, look at Doug and Richard and Deviani. Hi everyone. So logically, let's take the toddler. A newborn, we're okay with a newborn screaming. Nobody in a store or anywhere or in a restaurant or anything is ever going to care if you have a little baby in arms that's crying. It's as soon as they're like sitting in the high chair, right? As soon as they're able to color, as soon as they're like running around the booths. And this whole idea really comes from children should be seen and not heard. But developmentally, your child doesn't realize that they are a separate being from you. Like a newborn thinks that she is the mom. Like she has no idea that she's a different being at all. And an 18-month-old, they've done experiments where like at 12 months they'll put rouge on a baby's nose or on a mother's nose, and the baby will like look in the mirror, and like the mom and the baby look in the mirror at, like next to each other, and the baby starts touching her nose to try to get the rouge, the blush, like the red paint off of the baby's trying to like wipe it off of her own nose. And then at 24 months when they do it, they'll put red paint on the mom's nose, and the baby will start wiping the mom's nose. So somewhere around 18 months is when that realization happens, where a baby's like, oh, I'm not her, she's not me, like we're not the same person. And that's like just how your brain is formed. So any trauma that occurs with your mother prior to 18 months, like you guys heard me talking last week, my parents both worked full time. So starting after my mom's maternity leave, because America does not support mothers who are working, she had to go back to her 40-hour work week when I was 12 weeks old. So from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single night, Monday through Friday, I was with a different person who wasn't my mom. So not because of anything on her part, nothing that she could do about it, but just developmentally, I had abandonment issues from thinking that my mom was leaving every single day. And because babies have no concept of time, it was an eternity. Every single day, my mom was leaving for an eternity. And then I would only get to see her for like a short amount of time before bedtime. And then we would sleep and we would do it all over again. And then on the weekends, they really tried to like cram in that family fun time, right? But then you're also stressed out from work and you have to take care of the house when you're working for like 40 hours a week and all of that, right? So this has nothing to do with her or how she wanted to mother. It was just the circumstances. And because of where I was developmentally, that's a trauma that I have had to process through to just like understand, okay, the reason why I have like such a big anxiety about leaving, like when I leave my kids, that we have this big whole shebang, like a big hurrah. I don't really like to sneak away from them. All these things are actually because when I was a little kid and still thought that I was my mom, she kept leaving. So then you take to about 18 months, 3 years old. That's when you get like, they still pretty much need you, but there's like more of that like independence, and they're going to like run away a little bit further at the playground or things like that, right? You notice that like your baby will get all the way across to the other side of the playground or something. When they're only 18 months old, they're like still staying really close to you, right? So it's just learning how to, and that's where the role of the dad actually comes in a huge way, is as soon as the baby learns that she's separate from the mom, the dad's job is to help like guide her further and further away from the nest. So like that's the role in the brain for the dad to be really focused on. Prior to 18 months, most babies don't give a fuck about their dad. Like no offense, but you're not the titty, you're not the mom, like you're not connected. Like we grew this baby. So it's not like, no offense on you, and like you're super helpful when you go and get us food while we're breastfeeding and get up in the middle of the like absolutely needed. We need you. The moms, we need the dads during that 18-month period, because we have like this extra, like here we've been pregnant for 9 months, but like the leaching and the feeling like there's a parasite and all that shit still keeps happening. So absolutely the dads are necessary, but like when it comes to where do you fit in developmentally with a baby, the dad going to work all day, like the baby just literally doesn't give a fuck. Like whatever, it's fine. I don't, like, I got my mom, it's all good. Even when you're like bottle feeding versus nursing, just like being close to mom, because it's your heartbeat, it's your breathing, it's your voice that the baby has known. So then you get to like 3 and 4, and that age that everyone expects your kids to sit down and be quiet. True that, thing said. So the baby, we, like in America, we expect the baby that 3, 4, 5, your kids, like you order food at a restaurant and you expect them to be quiet and to wait and just color on the paper. And what they really want to do is like, where's my food? I asked for this. Why don't I have it on my plate? Why can't I see it? Where's it going? Like, why, like, where's my food? Okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then as soon as they know where the bathroom is, what do they want to do? As soon if their food's not here, they're going to keep trying to go back to the bathroom, and you can't get them to listen. Well, it's because now the next level of their brain is developing. Now that they know that they're an independent person, they're going to start testing the boundaries in other ways, but now they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is my boundary? What is my expectation? And the way you teach that isn't based on fear. So the reason why your kid isn't listening to you is because the second that you're like, come here, sit down, your face gets scary and your voice gets low. And because their brain is still so newly developed and they're just barely learning that Macmillan level. Like before they're reptiles, they're pretty much all reptiles. They learn how to like a little bit of that mammalian brain and like the cortex, prefrontal cortex, I don't remember. I'm learning. There's a lot of parts of the brain, guys. It's really fucking fascinating, but it's kind of hard. So you've got your reptile brain, like every species of reptile looks like this, and humans have one too. And then you have your mammalian brain, and that's going to be like lions and zebras, and humans have it too. And then what separates humans from them is like the top part of our brains, where we have like ideas and we can think about the future and we have words, and because animals have communication, right? But we have like languages, and the biggest thing about humans is that we can conceptualize into the future, and animals don't really do that. Even like hunting animals are really only thinking like a few seconds ahead of time, and it's because their input and their output are right next to each other. So they see food, they eat food. Versus our input is like over here and our output is over here. So we can see food and we can make food art, or we can eat the food, or we can ignore the food, or we can think about what that food's going to do to our ass. So that's like the biggest separation actually. So, but during that time when a baby is born, those things they're closer together, right? That makes sense because their brain isn't as big. So they're right next to each other. So as the input starts separating, I see food, I want to eat food. Well, for a toddler, it's still like really close together. So they're not really listening to you because they can smell the food, they want the food, they're in the restaurant, and they just food, eat, food, eat, food, eat, food, eat, right? So that's one thing, just knowing your developmental level of your child. So a 4 or 5 year old, 3, 4, 5 year old, not listening in the restaurant, running around, not being able to sit still, wanting the food right away, wanting to switch what drink they have like 15 times, all of it developmentally normal because they are barely getting out of this fight or flight, like reptilian brain always. And the more you use scare tactics, the more you use fear, the more you use shame, it actually shuts down their brain development. So that means that you start going, sit down, you have to be quiet, you need to listen. When you do that, you are actually causing their brain to go into fight or flight mode. And when their brain goes into fight or flight mode, especially a younger kid whose like reptilian brain is more developed essentially than their human brain is, they shut down and they get cornered, and they're not, you go into Charlie Brown voice, wah, 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 but you're like angry. That's literally what you sound like to your toddler because they have shut off their understanding, their linguistic system just like shuts down the second they get scared. and they get scared more easily, especially little boys, because they are hyper erotic, hypersensitive, hyperstimulated. There we go. Sorry, all these hyper words. So they get hyperstimulated, and that's based on men, boys, males of the human species were out hunting, right? When we were like growing and being like, they were bigger, they were stronger, and they had to learn how to like be more aware of like a cheetah or whatever, like some sort of animal when they're alone in the bushes, right? So a baby boy, I've talked about this before, a baby boy, you would look him in the eye and like about every 15 seconds he has to look away. And it's because it's too much stimulation. He likes it, but it's just too much. And when you look at him and you're like, hey, look at me, that actually makes him feel ashamed. Like, oh, I did something wrong. So like you just give him a second to look away and he'll look back at you. Versus a little girl, she's going to hold your gaze and she's going to keep watching you, and you can hold a gaze for a little baby girl for like 10 minutes. And then, but if you look away from her, then that's going to cause her shame. So even just then, just like newborn level, how the men and female brains are different. So then change that to your toddler, and your toddler little boy isn't listening to you because you're trying to scare him into sitting down. And now he's like, I don't want to go anywhere near you. You're fucking scary. What do you want me to sit next to you? Hell no, that is not happening. You are fucking terrifying right now. I'm not going anywhere near you. And then it loops you into them not listening anymore. So the softer you can be, the calmer you can be, the more you can be below their eye level so that you're not threatening to them, the more their linguistic system will stay online so that you can say, I know, buddy, I understand that you want your quesadilla right now, but in a restaurant, they have to bring it to the back and they have to go to the kitchen. And maybe instead of letting him run to the bathroom every time, you walk back and you can pick him up and like, okay, we can't go into the kitchen, but that's where they're cooking our food. Okay, do you see it when they're finished? And then you have this opportunity to teach your 4-year-old about the restaurant and what's expected of him in a restaurant. And it's not just like, wah! And yes, it's okay for you to take your kid outside of the restaurant and be like, you know what, you're acting way too big and loud for this space, and have this conversation outside if the inside like smells and your friends or whoever is like too much stimulation for them to handle. So they're like, that's why they're not listening. Take them out in the parking lot. Like, that's totally acceptable. So and then just keep emphasizing that every time you go to the restaurant. Like, don't say, oh, because you acted this way at the restaurant, we don't get to go to restaurants anymore. Like, that you're taking away a chance for them to learn. Maybe you just set yourself up better. Like, okay, for a little while, because he's in this phase, we're not going to go to the restaurant with the grandparents or something, because you know that your parents are like super old school and they like just don't get it and they think you're fucking pushovers or whatever. Or like, we can't go to dinner with these friends because they just like feed off of each other right now, and we're just gonna go together as like a family or with a few other people just to start really solidifying these expectations of being in a restaurant. So you want to be teaching them in every moment. You want to be learning. You want to be watching your child and what is it that's causing the freak out, and like, why is my child acting this way, and what do I want to teach them? And then keep that relative to what is developmentally appropriate. A 3-year-old, I have a minute per age rule. If my kid is 4, I'm not talking to him for longer than 4 minutes in a chunk because it's just not being retained. Usually less, like 4 is like the absolute cap, and I'm probably mixing it up because they just don't have the attention span for it. So these big, long lectures, the way that more than 90% of people are parenting their kids doesn't make any fucking sense, because it's not developmentally appropriate. It's filled with fear and shame. It's perpetuating the same shit that we then get to spend thousands of dollars on therapy when we're older. And it's what allows for a multi-billion-dollar self-care, self-help industry to exist to begin with. Is all parental wounding. Whether you say you had a good childhood or not is irrelevant. Whether you think you had trauma or not is irrelevant. Everyone had trauma. Everyone has wounding. Everyone needs this work. Whether you are a parent, want to be a parent, never want to be a parent, but have nieces and you think that your sister's crazy, so you want to be helpful. there is a child in your life who can benefit from you doing the work of learning how children work, working on your own wounding so that you don't repeat the patterns, and then claiming your authority in doing that, which is, now that we've got the logical part out, I'm going to spend the rest of the time on the claiming authority part. So for those of you who might have popped on a little bit later, what I've been talking about for this last 20 minutes is really just like developmentally appropriateness of each child. So then by the time you get to 10 years old, tantrums are still normal, but they understand like what is expected of them in a restaurant. And when they have days where they're like laying on the table or they're just like totally out of it, you don't need to be like so harsh on them, because you can probably assess like, oh, they had a sleepover yesterday, or oh, they just had a super long soccer game and they're just so hungry and want their food. So you don't need to be like, hey, get your head off the table. Hey, you need to be like, just how snippy we are. Like the way we treat our kids, I feel like you would never treat an adult that way, ever. Like you respect adults more than that. You know that adults have their own authority and can like choose whether because you're like, well, my kids have to deal with me no matter what, we treat them like shit. Like, honestly, it's like, I watch some people now, and I know that I used to do this, so it's not from a judgmental spot. It's just like, damn, I was mean and rude, and not just like a yeller, but like just had no respect for them and had no like compassion. It was just like, you're doing this because I say so. Like, I totally took that phrase out of my life because it's the like, because I said so. Okay, great. So because another person who has power over me, then that means that I just have to do what they say. I don't believe that as an adult. So why would I be teaching my children that? So there's the authority part that we'll now phase into. But I just wanted to touch on like the older kids. So a teenager, really quick, a teenager has that reptilian brain and that mammalian brain, and they're speaking and all of that stuff. But the prefrontal cortex is the last part of that upper brain that I was telling you about. And that's your decision-making brain. That's why teenagers are so smart, but they're like the stupidest fucking people on the planet, right? It's because their decision-making brain, it actually isn't fully developed until you're 24. So think about all the bad decisions you made between 18 and 24, and it's because your brain still wasn't fully developed, but you were considered an adult. So if we don't set up our kids to really be powerful in every other part of their brain so that that development of the prefrontal cortex can be as smooth as possible as they integrate out into the real world, then that's the reason why you have so many kids, like millennials or teenagers. Like, you have all these horrible things, like the insurance agencies for car insurance. That's like, when do you get your insurance break? When you're 25. It's because they know that after 24, you're actually making better decisions. And no one thinks about that. They're just like, oh yeah, by then I'm making good. Yeah, but there was a reason why you made bad decisions when you were 19 and 20. It's because your brain wasn't developed all the way yet. And yet we expect our younger children to be making great decisions. Well, why did you choose this sport? Why did you choose ballet if you didn't want to? And it's always like, we put it on them and we give them all of the power, and then we're pissed off that they have all the power over us. And no. And then we just give in. Hello, Joseph. Hello, everyone. Everyone say hi when you pop on. I'm going to take some coffee and like transition to the next part, because that's where we're at right now. All right. So authority. Well, let's first ask this question. What do people think about when they think authority? To be fair, if a boyfriend spoke to me the way my kids do, we would have been broken up a long time ago. Right, but so Heather, let me address that really quick. Why do our kids treat us like shit? Let's just ask that question like that. Does anybody know the answer to that? I kind of already gave the answer, so we'll see if you guys were paying attention. Hey, Cindy. So the reason why your kids talk to you the way that they do, The reason why your kids push the boundaries, why it seems like you let your kids sleep over at a friend's house and they're like, oh, she was a perfect angel and she helped us do the dishes and blah, blah, and you're like, the fuck? I can't get her to do dishes for shit. Like, what do you mean she helped you do the dishes? Like, the hell? And then she comes home and you're like, you want to help me do the dishes? And she's like, bam, like throws and breaks a plate or whatever. And it's just like acting horrendous, right? And you're like, why is there this huge disconnect? It's that connection that I was talking about to begin with, how the baby thinks that they are the mom. So you are the safest place for them to test boundaries. When your kid acts worse around someone else than they do around you, it's because they don't trust you. You've broken that connection. And I say you because they're also, all of that stuff, they are your mirror. They mirror what they were taught in the first 7 years of life, mostly, but really that first 3 years. So here you are dealing with this kid that doesn't realize they're separate from you. You don't really, they need you for everything. And you don't realize how much they're like interpreting what you're doing. I talk about my oldest all the time with this because I am right-handed and my husband is right-handed. So if you guys took biology, we should have a right-handed kid. But I was going to school full-time and my husband was working full-time when our oldest was born. So my mom, and we lived with my parents, my mom pretty much raised him for the first 3 years of life. Like, we were around, but we weren't like with him in the day-to-day all the time. Like, we were swapping schedule. You know how it is. Like, I had him when I was 20. You know the story. She is left-handed. Like, crazy left-handed, can barely pick anything up with her right hand. Like, she buttons her buttons and things like that, but like could never, like, doesn't stir, doesn't, nothing. My son is left-handed because he was watching her intentionally like eat food left-handed or feed him left-handed or like do everything left-handed. So he is left-handed, but he's also like, he throws a frisbee disc with his right hand because the person that he watched doing that was my husband, who's right-handed. Or he can kick a soccer ball stronger with his right foot, but it's actually because they're ungrateful buttholes. That's funny. But he's more accurate with his left just because that's stronger development. So he has a huge pull of nature versus nurture. I really want to one day be able to like get his genetic like genes tested if they know how, like, which gene that is, which I don't think they do. But if they ever figured out which gene it was that tells you whether or not you're right or left-handed, I would love to know if he's like genetically right-handed or not. So the way that you treated your newborn, so if you like freaked out, like, why are you crying? Then your toddler is probably more likely to have freakouts, just because that's what they like learned and interacted with. And you're like, oh, you're just a baby and I'm sorry, and you pick them up right away. So they use you as a gauge on where they're back. Oh, mom totally lost it here, better like back up. But again, the totally losing it puts them into fight or flight, so they're less likely to even learn a lesson. But you also don't want to leave the room because you want to teach them how to come down from these big emotions that they also are going to be having. That's why I say that pleasurable parenting is a whole life alignment, really. You can't only do this shit half of the time. You can't say that you want to enjoy parenting and think that you're never going to have another freak out moment. That's just like the most not going to happen thing. We should talk about left and right hands later. Okay, Cindy, send me a private message later. That'd be cool. Do you know something about Ryan's genetics that I don't? Because that would be interesting. Anyway, I digress. So when you have your kids like pushing those boundaries, that's actually really good. And I know that you're like, that's not what I want to hear, but it's when, like I said before, when your kid pushes more boundaries with someone else than they do with you, it's because they actually feel safer and trust that person more than they trust you as a parent. So moms and dads, your kids should act like ungrateful assholes around you. If they weren't, then there would actually be a cause for concern and to really look at where ruptures and connections have been broken. So thank you, Heather, for asking that question. It's a very, very legitimate point. Or, yeah. Oh, coffee. So, authority. We all know what authority is. Authority is power, right? Power over us. Who has authority in our lives? The government has authority. The police have authority. Children, who has authority in children's lives? Parents have authority. Coaches have authority. Teachers have authority. Any adult, essentially, we teach them way more about authority than like as we get older and we have our own authority, we start making our own decisions. Like maybe you don't think the police are an authority and you got issues with them. Like it's just, or the government. More people have an issue with the government than with the police, but just depends, I guess. Overuse of authority is what we mostly think about with dads are important in developing nonverbal communication and touch, movement, facial expressions. Yeah, totally, Joseph. So the dads here, I love working with dads. Like, no offense, ladies, but you guys have so much fucking shit that we have to unbury that's like societal and cultural. Like men just don't have that. It's so nice to work with them because they already are the fun ones. You ever notice that, moms, where you're like, why do the kids want to go play football with dad? And they just like want to be mean to me all the time. So dads have such an important role when it comes to teaching that exactly what you said, nonverbal touch, communications, like the society's interactions, like how to interact with the rest of the tribe. And mom is like the safe haven at home. And then just as you get older and mom is coming out of the home more, and like she can teach some of that, and she teaches more of the connecting and the bonding, but dads really do talk about like work with like the facial expression, because dads are the first not me that a baby learns about. Because if mom and me are the same person, then the first other person in a baby's life is dad. So really learning like that interaction and that connection, and again, how dads really lead you into the world and testing those boundaries. And you know how like there's that picture, that meme of like a dad throwing a baby in the air and like how high I'm the baby, or how high I'm really throwing the baby, and it's like this much, and then like how high the baby thinks I'm going, and it's like a little bit higher. How high mom thinks I'm throwing is like 20 feet in the air or something like that, right? We've all seen this meme. That's again like that risk taking, and the men were the ones who would go out of the villages and would go out into the real world. So once your child was of age, what did the boys do? They went out, and we all know of all these indigenous cultures that have these coming of age ceremonies for each the woman and the man, and the boys are almost always going out into the woods and have to like usually kill something and then come back, right? And then the girls are having more, it's usually around the time of their first menstrual cycle and when they really become a woman, and big fanfare and fancy to do around that because it's a very sacred time for her as well. So it's just men absolutely play a huge vital role, and they already have so much fun with the kids, and they're already doing the more crazy and taking action, that this pleasurable parenting thing really kicks in with dads, and they're able to drop the anchor. They're able to drop that like, I have to be a tough guy because my dad was a tough guy. And there's so many wounds that men are dealing with that are completely different from women, and that's why I love working with both. I love working with couples together. I love working with single dads who have gotten custody, just everyone. It's amazing. Like I said, people who don't even have kids. It's just such awesome work, because as you learn about your own brain, you can then transpose that onto any child that's in your life at all, or even just kids in general. Then you're like no longer annoyed by the kid when you go out to coffee for like with yourself. You don't like, you look at the mom and you're like, honey, you're fine. Like, don't worry. I see that you're freaking out over there, but I understand you, so you're good, right? How much nicer would it be for moms to like want to venture out of their house if more people who aren't even parents handled their own wounding from their own childhood, not just by laying on a couch, but like energetically. And that again comes back to that authority. So authority is power, and we usually think of it as power outside of us, but we have our own inner authority. And that is the mantra that you guys hear me say all the time of no one and nothing has power over me. What that really means is that I am the one who controls and is an authority. So I don't really like the word control. I think of gaming. And I did actually do a live stream back in December called How to Gain Control of Your Household or something like that. And what I was really talking about was authority, but I hadn't even really learned that term yet. And I did that live stream, and I swear to God, like within a week, all of a sudden the word authority kept coming up. And I was like, oh, that's what I was actually talking about. It was not control, but authority. So if you guys see that live ever, if you're ever bored and looking at my YouTube channel or whatever, just remember this one and you'll know what I'm talking about. So the authority is this idea that you are the one who is going to decide how you react to anything in any given moment, and who you're going to share that authority with, or how you're going to allow other people's reactions or actions to affect you. So newborns have tons of authority. We give them our authority because we understand that they are susceptible and need to be nurtured, right? So we have our newborn, and when she cries, we go and get her, and we figure out, what do you need, a bottle? Do you need a butt change? Do you need, what is it that you need? And she knows that she has all this authority, because obviously if she didn't, then we wouldn't come and change her butt, and we wouldn't come and give her a bottle, and we wouldn't make sure she was warm. So babies are already born with all of this crazy amounts of power, and they know it. They're very, very aware of it. And then again, as they are learning and growing with us, and they're learning how to do things on their own, they have their own power, and we are slowly not having to hold as much of it for them as well, because they have the power to call for something. Wow, my phone just went off like 1,000 times. Sorry, guys. They have the power to call out for something, but they're physically incapable of doing it, right? And that's just because of developmentally. Like, did you ever guys think about like why it is that a baby giraffe is born and like running within a couple of hours, and a human baby doesn't learn how to walk until they're like 1, or talk, or like do any of that stuff? And by the time a giraffe is like 3, instead of only learning how to wipe their ass at that point, they've been like doing this life thing and running away from lions and all that shit for 3 years now. The reason why is because the brain, and just the fact that we came upright onto 2 legs. So to be able to give birth and to be able to have a baby, we birth them way early, essentially. We birth them at 9 months gestation, when really a human isn't really like ready to be more independent until like 2 years old, some 18 months, something like that. Like we should be like double the amount of time, because a lot of places, especially like in indigenous places, by the time a child is a year old, they know like where to go to the bathroom and like have done all of that, because they don't have disposable diapers that keep them dry. It actually deters them from learning how to listen to their own body. These diapers do, actually. So when we came to 2 feet, we actually decided, however, in whatever realm, we decided that that meant that we were going to care for the baby for many, many months after the pregnancy to then get them ready. Because, like, yes, we wouldn't optimally want a 4-year-old out in the woods, and probably would die, but like we all seen Tarzan, right? Or the Jungle Book. What I mean by that is like there's all these stories and all these myths of, usually boy. I don't think I've ever heard of a girl being raised by wolves, but these myths do exist in varying countries and varying cultures. So we know that this idea of a boy living out in the wilderness at a very young age is something that would have been true at some point along our lineage. We don't really create stories from anything that we don't already know on some level. Okay, so then authority. God, it's really getting hard for me to talk about this. So the authority then comes to, again, that point 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, where they know that they're powerful, and now they can get what they want. They no longer need you to get the things that they want, right? And they are unapologetic about it. I don't give a shit. Like, this is what I want. I want it right now. Give it to me now. The input and the output are still really close to each other. And you have to, this is where it's so important to have that play and to have that pleasure, because now you get the awesome responsibility of teaching them how to hold their power while you retain yours, so that together you're both sovereign beings coexisting, but no one is the subject of the other one. So what I mean by that is, punishment is you enforcing your power and authority over your child. My way or the highway. You do it this way or this is going to happen. Instead of being, and I'm not talking about it from a safety measure of like crossing the street. It's how do you teach that lesson? Do you grab their arm? Oh my God, little Timmy, you could have just got hit by a car. Do you know what would have happened? What did we already learn? What did we already learn about 3 and 4-year-olds? The second your voice gets high, the second your face gets wrinkled, the second you seem aggressive and you're towering over them, wah 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 is all he hears. He's scared. He doesn't want to listen to you. Doesn't give a shit about what you're saying. He would rather get hit by a car. Like, over there looked way more fun than what he's having to deal with over here. Versus getting low, sitting down on the ground, giving him a big hug. To me, cars are really big. And then again, go look at your car. What can you teach? Why is my child acting this way? What can I teach them? And when you think of parenting, every parenting moment in those 2 questions, you stop the generational cycle of being this scary authority over them. Because when you treat your young children like this, and then you wonder why your teenager doesn't come and talk to you, and why your teenager is looking to other people for advice, and why your teenager totally disrespects the shit out of you, all you have to do is go look at how you treated them before they were a teenager. Because you taught them how to treat other people. So if you treated them like they were nothing, like their opinions didn't matter, that their excitements don't matter, that they have to just listen to the rules no matter what, that it's your way or the highway, that you are a scary place, not a safe place, then there should be zero shock when they're hanging out with someone else who makes them feel safe, who makes them feel heard, who makes them feel felt. Like, so many kids aren't even just allowed to have their feelings. Oh, it's okay, honey. And we wipe the tears and we try to get them to feeling better again. But we don't just let them feel the freak out. We don't let them just be upset about their pet snail that got ran over by the lawnmower. Or we freak out when they bring the bug in to begin with. Get that bug out of my house, instead of being excited about them finding a bug with them. Okay, look at that bug. Oh, that's so pretty. Look at those colors. Okay, where'd you find the bug? Okay, let's go put the bug back, because the bug's house is out there and our house is in here. And next time I would appreciate it if you would just leave the bug out there and I'll come look at it with you, okay? Again, it's the same lesson, but the way that I just described it is actually going to be retained in their brain for like a minute. And then they're going to have to learn it again. So that would be like, when it comes to authority, it really is just like, what do I want to actually teach them? What do I want to actually be? What do I want them to mirror? Well, now that I know about mirror neurons, and now that I know that they are just going to act the way that I'm acting, then how do I want to act? So the final piece of that is, if your child isn't listening to you, how often are you listening to yourself? how in tune are you with your own intuition? How many times are you looking to someone else for an answer instead of looking to yourself for an answer? Because your children can feel that. Kids are very, very energetically sensitive. And the more, like, kids after 2000 and really after 2012, and yes, this is going way from the logical side and jumping into the metaphysical, but I teach parenting, like I said, on the whole spectrum. And this energetic shit around kids and the crystal children is, like, it's undeniable as far as I'm concerned. So that's the reason why I'm bringing it up. I haven't been able to disprove it. And I have 3 children who all, the boys totally are this way, and Zena's acting more and more this way. She's going to be 2 in a couple of weeks, and I can't handle it. Anyway, the more that I claimed my own authority in my own body, and what I mean by that is the more I showed up for me, the more I listened to myself, the more I made decisions, every decision, from what I'm going to wear in the morning to what I'm going to eat to who I'm going to call to what I'm going to post, and really thinking, not thinking with my left brain, just like taking a second, taking a deep breath. What am I going to wear today? And just open my eyes and like, or I see what I'm wearing and I just wear it. Don't question it. Oh, do I really want to? Ooh, what's the weather outside? Like, nothing. I haven't had to double check what the weather was in like months and I live in the basement, so I don't always know, like my bedroom is in the basement, so I don't always know what the weather is when I go outside, but I still just, what should I wear today? And I put it on and I'll go upstairs and what I'm wearing is totally appropriate for the weather that's outside. So when you are not listening to your own intuition, when you're constantly like, oh, I should listen to myself, or, oh, well, that's what I thought I should do, but then I did something else, and you're not even listening to yourself, your kids know that. Your kids can feel that. They can sense it. So when you don't even believe in your own authority, that you don't even believe that you're worth listening to, then they're just like, well, she doesn't have any authority. She doesn't know what she wants. He doesn't know what he wants. He has no idea what he's doing. So might as well just do it myself, because at least I know what I want. Kids are great at knowing what they want, right? All the kids know what they want. Adults don't know what they want. It's like that scene in The Notebook when Noah's yelling at Allie. What do you want? It's not that easy. What do you want? It's not that. What do you want? That's all you have to ask. Like, what is it that you desire? That's again what I mean by pleasurable parenting is full whole body. You have to get into your body. It's whole life alignment. What do I desire on a physical level? What is my body craving right now? What do I desire on a mental level? What do I want to learn right now? What do I desire on an emotional level? What do I desire to feel right now? And what do I desire to, experience right now on, in the physical plane, on an energetic, like, how do I desire to be enlightened? Do I desire to go to church? What is it that I really desire? Because once you know what you desire and you feel it in your entire being, your body, your mind, your spirit, your emotions, everything, you then are able to hear the answer. This is what's required for you to do that. This is where you need to go. This is who you need to talk to. This is how in a year, in 12 weeks, actually, I dropped half my body size. This is how in a year, I went from being like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not having any more kids. My baby's about to turn 1, to having a successful 5-figure business, to traveling all over the country, to having a book that's going to be coming out at the end of the year. Just all these different things that are going on in my life that I could never have imagined a year ago. And yet, as I started listening to myself on a day-to-day basis, these things just like pop up like magic, which is why I say that pleasurable parenting is teaching the parent how to live their dream life. Because right now you're the king or the queen, and your little child is the princess or the prince, and they have all these desires and wants, but they can't really create them for themselves. So you get to create them for them. But instead of just handing it over to them, the pleasurable parent teaches the child how to use this authority. I say it all the time. I hope to put myself out of business. I hope that my children don't have to spend thousands of dollars in therapy. I hope that I'm able to heal these wounds while they're still in my sphere and in my space. I hope that I am able to save them from their 20s when you're just like, you don't know your body, you weren't taught about your body, now you're experimenting with your body, you weren't taught about brain development, so you think you're making all these good decisions, but you're not actually capable of making good decisions just from teaching, just from enjoying it. The term discipline actually comes from the same root word as the word disciple, as in Jesus's disciples, who he taught. So the word discipline actually means to teach. We've taken it, or to just be disciplined, to be on your own path, to know what it is that is required of you, to have these standards and to hold those standards with impeccable integrity, and then radically trust that as long as you do hold your standards, that everything that you desire is going to be yours. That's all I do every day. I know it sounds like, well, that's fucking simple. It's really way more complicated on that when you realize how much authority you've given to other people, how much authority you've given to your parents and just let them hold on to it, or to an old friend, or to a college roommate, or the guy that raped you. Like, really, this power is you've given it all away. Mm-hmm. And then you wonder why your kids don't listen to you. It's because you don't have any power anymore, and they have it all because they haven't given it all away. And you've probably been sucking it off of them. And that's why your relationship is as strained as it is. Okay. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Because I feel done. Instagram, no. Yeller. Oh, here, you had a question, Heather. Sorry, I didn't see it. Is there a way to repair the damage if you were a yeller and trying not to be, or have spanked in the past but not now? Okay, yes, absolutely. Consistency. Good morning, Danielle. Consistency, Heather. So having a conversation with your children about the fact that you're changing was probably the biggest thing for me, at least, because I absolutely was a yeller, and I know that my oldest is older than your oldest. So like for a long time, I was a yeller. Only in the last like 2 years or so have I stopped yelling, and I still yell. Like, I won't lie, it happens, but I apologize when it does. That's one thing, parents, again, the authority thing, we think like, oh, as soon as I say something, I have to just follow through with it. And a lot of the times we'll say something that we are never going to follow through with, so then we don't show the authority, or we don't apologize because we think that they have to see us as infallible when we aren't. We're humans, right? So doing something fun, like taking them out on a date or whatever, and really like, hey, girls, Heather, I'm talking to you specifically. Hey, girls, I want to just let you know that I know that when you were younger, that I was mean, mommy, and I was scary, and I yelled, and sometimes I spanked you, and it was only because I didn't know that there was a better way. And you know that I've been trying to be better, and you know that I'm sure you've seen that I'm not yelling as much, but I still yell sometimes. I'm really sorry about yelling when I do, and I want you to know that I'm still going to yell sometimes, because it's really hard to break a habit. And maybe there's a habit that they have. Maybe that's what I added in. Like, my oldest used to suck his thumb, so it was easy to like, what the hell? Decline. Hello, Facebook, Instagram. Sorry, I don't know if that's working. Sorry. If they have an old habit, then like that's really good to help incorporate into it, because you can explain like, remember when you used to do this and how it was hard for you to break that habit. So if they're like a nail biter, maybe they twist their hair, whatever. If they don't have a habit, then like just explain to them what a habit is. And kids usually get this. So just explaining like they can change. Or do you remember when you didn't know how to tie your shoes? And it took a lot of practice, right? And still sometimes you don't always do it right. We have to do it together. Well, that's what's happening when I'm yelling. That's what happens. What was going on was before I didn't know how to not yell. And now I know that it's not good for you because yelling actually fires the same parts of their brain as pain. So spanking and yelling actually aren't any different in the development of their brain, which a lot of us thought like, oh, as long as I'm not spanking my kids, at least I'm not harming them. It literally lights up the exact same neurons in their brains. So you might as well hit them if you're yelling at them. But that doesn't mean that you can't repair it, because we all know that this is not just us. This is epigenetics. This is ingrained in our ancestral line, which is the other reason why I can't say that I'm going to teach you how to not yell ever, because you're a human. So you get angry. And when we get angry, we yell. But what do we do after we yell is what is important. So many moms either yell and then just like zip it up and change, or they leave the room and have a mommy timeout. Dads do the same thing. They just like leave and go play their video games or watch a game of football or whatever. And like they have their ritual for calming down, but it's usually done behind closed doors, and the kids never watch the process. And so they never actually learn, again, mirror neurons, they never learn how to calm down themselves. So then they're having a freak out and you're just all like, calm down, chill out. It's not that big of a fucking deal. And they don't know how, because whenever you freak out like that, you don't calm down in front of them. You don't show them what it means for you to, like, you have to take some deep breaths, or you have to sit on the floor, or maybe you cry. It's okay to be a whole human in front of your kids. It's okay to freak out and then calm down in front of them. So again, they can see it. And then after you've calmed down, to apologize. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm so sorry. I am just, and you can explain it. Like, sometimes people expect their kids to act a certain way and they don't think about like timing. They don't think like, oh, my kid woke up at 7 o'clock and then went to school until 3 and then immediately went over to a friend's house, and I don't know if they had a snack because that friend was bringing them to soccer, and now I just picked them up from soccer practice and he's being a total asshole. Well, think about how it would have been for you. You have such important conversations. Thank you. You're welcome, Danielle. Yay. You don't think about how that would look in your world. So maybe you always wake up at 7. So let's make it earlier for you. You woke up at 5 o'clock that morning, and then you had to work until 2, and then it's been going nonstop, and you never had a snack, or at lunch you haven't eaten pretty much all day except for a little something in the morning, and now it's the evening. Are you going to be rational? Are you going to be tired? Are you going to be hangry? Because if you are, then so are your kids. Especially kids in the public education system, we are expecting most children are working 70-hour weeks. That's ridiculous. We don't expect ourselves to work 70-hour weeks for the most part. And people that do work 70-hour weeks, guess what? They all hate it. All of them. So that's like the big thing that every coach teaches, right? Time freedom and financial freedom. Like, I make $100,000 in a week and it's only 12 hours a week or whatever, right? These things are because we don't want to work for someone else. But then we've given authority outwards because our teachers were our authority. So we're just like looking for someone to tell us how to live our lives. So we go and we work for someone else. But that's a whole different thing. But it builds. It really is. It's not a whole different thing. It's all connected. So Heather, to answer your question, just talk to them. Just like explain it. And then every time you continue to yell, just apologize and just remind them of the conversation. That's why I like to make it in like a date, sort of like a fun place, not like a big fun place where they're not going to be paying attention, but like, do you remember when we went to that restaurant and I got you guys each a flower? Or you can get them a little crystal. Like, just remember, like, even when mommy gets mad, like, this crystal has all my love in it. And then they can like have, my son, my Alex has a special stone and it's a heart-shaped like green stone. So that way, like, even if he thinks that I've been mad at him, he can find it and hold it and be like, no, mommy loves me. Mommy loves me. So it's just however it works in your family, but really just like, just try and then just talk to your kids. Like, it's not a big secret. So many people are like, adulting is hard and all these difficult things and blah, blah, blah. And it's really because we weren't willing to be vulnerable in front of our children. So with that, please reach out to me if you are interested in working with me one-on-one. I have a few spots available to start in June. I'm so excited, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye. Doing too many things.